On July 30th, 1865, hundreds of people boarded a side-wheel steamer called the Brother Jonathan in Crescent City, California. The boat was traveling its usual route up and down the West Coast, home of spectacular scenery and treacherous waters.
The weather looked okay when they left, but right away, as soon as they got just a couple miles off the shore of California, the weather turned.
Suddenly, stormy seas created 50-knot winds and 30-foot swells. This sent the passenger steamship hurtling towards a rock.
There were winds creating huge swells that were just rocking the ship back and forth.
According to eyewitnesses, these swells were so huge that they literally lifted the ship out of the water and slammed it down on top of the rock.
It couldn't do anything. It tried to pull itself off the rock, and that just ended up ripping the ship even more. So at that point, the captain told people to abandon ship, and they started filling lifeboats.
The only one that was able to escape was a small lifeboat with 19 people on it. The other lifeboats
had been filled up and turned over, and people drowned right away.
Like the iceberg that sank the Titanic years later, the largest portion of the obstacle hid underwater. That made it more dangerous than it looked. In less than an hour, all the cargo, including a treasure in gold, was lost, and over 200 people were killed.
Over the next several months after the shipwreck, bodies washed ashore along a 100-mile stretch, and not all of them could be identified. If they didn't have their names sewed into their clothing, which some people had, or other kinds of things that were ways to specifically identify them, many people just went completely unnamed and were buried without any names at all. And of course, many people were just never identified.
The shipwreck remains one of the deadliest maritime disasters of the Pacific coast. From the Gert Boyle Studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. Today, the story of the Brother Jonathan and how it carried people from all walks of life, from all over the world.
Right now we're headed offshore to intercede with the course that the Brother Jonathan was on. Because it was so dangerous out here. There's numerous sinker rocks through here.
This is Harry Adam, ship captain of Stella's Adventures. My colleague Cami Horton with OPB's Northwest History Show Oregon Experience went out to sea with him. She said that day on the water was perfect, which was good for her because
I tend to get seasick,
Oh,
so
no.
I was not really looking forward to it. But it ended up being the perfect day. It was very clear and there weren't waves. But even the ship's captain was saying, this is the closest I've ever come to it. And he was saying he kind of could feel the hair sticking up on his, on his arm because it could be potentially quite dangerous. And weather can turn really quickly out there, even in perfect conditions.
being on the West Coast, shipwrecks are highly common.
Because there are a lot of stories, both historic and modern, that, we kind of grow up hearing about.
Of course, now we have much newer equipment and more safety features like lighthouses. But back in the 1800s, it was worth risking the treacherous waters off the West Coast on ships like the Brother Jonathan.
There weren't any roads in this time period.
The Brother Jonathan traveled from San Francisco to Crescent City to Portland to Vancouver Island. Before the forests in the Northwest were logged, they were really dense. Traveling by land was not easy, so the waterways were the highways. Before the arrival of European settlers, the Tolowa and Yurok tribes made the area in Northern California around what is now Crescent City their home. But by the mid-1800s, the government forcibly moved indigenous people onto reservations. Meanwhile, the gold rush brought thousands of miners, merchants, and settlers. Zachary Stocks is the executive director and public historian for Oregon Black Pioneers.
There was a gold rush in British Columbia in 1858 on the Fraser River, and that brought thousands of Americans to the British Columbia waterways in search of gold, and steamships were the primary means of their transport there. The Brother Jonathan was just one of those ships to make that voyage.
In the spring of 1862, the Brother Jonathan docked in Victoria, British Columbia. It joined other ships offloading hundreds of passengers there.
And an outbreak started of smallpox.
It spread through most of the region's indigenous communities.
And just wiped out kind of unknown numbers. It spread up the West Coast, and, we really don't know how many tens of thousands of people potentially died from it.
David Lewis is a professor of anthropology and indigenous studies at Oregon State University. He's also a member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde.
The diseases caused a huge decline in their numbers, in their power, their economics, their everything, their society, and likely a number of tribal cultures went completely extinct.
In 1859, Brother Jonathan carried the news to Portland that the Oregon Territory had become a state, the only state admitted to the Union with an exclusion clause in its constitution. That clause banned both slavery and free Black people from living in Oregon. Here's Zachary Stocks again.
They had become marginalized in every way politically. They had no rights to own property, to start businesses. They couldn't bring lawsuits against white defendants. Essentially, they made it so that Black people had no civil rights in Oregon whatsoever.
Many Black Americans came west anyway.
In doing research about some of the early Black historical figures in Portland during the 19th century, I was surprised at how many references came up to the Brother Jonathan. And that set me down a path to try and figure out what is this ship and what is the story about it that connects to the experiences of Black Portlanders.
An international, diverse crew on these ships made it all happen.
The maritime trades were among the most diverse occupations that Black people could be a part of. It offered them a life of freedom, potentially, on the seas, and an ability to make a living where they would be far from the communities where they might be persecuted.
Alan Flowers was a teenager who worked on the crew of the Brother Jonathan. In 1865, he jumped ship in Portland.
A decision which ultimately saved his life because the Brother Jonathan was wrecked just a few months later.
In the 1880s, Flowers traveled to Victoria to marry Louisa Thacker. And then
the newlyweds relocated to Portland together, and they would live there for the rest of their lives. They started a family which would become among the most prominent and successful Black families in all of Oregon in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Louisa was one of hundreds of Black Americans who left the U.S. and its racist laws for Canada. British Columbia Governor James Douglas welcomed Black Americans.
British Columbia at this time period has a governor whose mother is Black, and he's wanting to establish settlements there so that Americans don't try to kind of invade and take over that area as their own, because things are still, the borders are still they haven't been settled for a long time. So he says, if you come here and you settle here, then you can become full citizens, which you can't be in the United States. You could vote, you can be a part of all the citizenry here like anyone else.
The Brother Jonathan and other West Coast steamships of this era literally carried hundreds of Black Americans to freedom.
For those traveling on the Brother Jonathan, there were different sections of the ship for people from different economic and social classes, just like on the Titanic.
The main deck would be crowded with throngs of passengers from all different social backgrounds. You would have immigrants, you would have the working poor, and you would have people of color.
It was different layers, and so the very bottom of the ship would be where the steerage class were. And so they paid the least, and they were just kind of all together. This could be in bunks. It wasn't segregated at all. So you had all races and all sexes, families, all kind of down there together. And I'm sure it wasn't a very pleasant situation when so many people were getting seasick and that kind of thing. And then you would have different layers of more higher classes. And so some people had private staterooms with their own wash bins or private service. So one of the things I had read is that the highest class passengers like to drink champagne as a way to help them deal with motion sickness. So they would have people serving them this, or they, could take meals in their rooms, or they would have a nice dining room, and then the upper class would eat at a certain time, and then the steerage class would eat at a different time.
How much did a ticket cost?
This is a great question because I don't think there's an easy answer. They advertised, all these steamships advertised in the newspapers to say, the Brother Jonathan is leaving Friday. But they didn't advertise the price. And I think that that's probably because it just depended on the conditions. Whether there were a lot of other ships that were also leaving that day, if the weather was bad and they were trying to, maybe they would lower prices to get people on, or if there was a new gold rush happening somewhere, probably those prices would go up. I think that they probably varied quite a bit. So I have seen everything from, in other steamships, I've seen everything from $35 to $400. So I don't know what the ticket prices were for this particular trip, but it did vary quite a bit. I do know that it was capable of holding up to 1,000 people, and a few weeks before this, it had carried that many. And this trip, it was carrying just over 200 people. So maybe those prices weren't quite as much.
Interesting. It's kind of like surge pricing.
Yeah.
The passengers who were on the Brother Jonathan the day it sank included Anson G. Henry,
who was a doctor at the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation here in Oregon, but he was also a close personal friend of President Lincoln, and he happened to be on the East Coast when President Lincoln was shot. So he rushed to the White House, and he stayed to comfort the widow while she was dealing with this horrible tragedy.
He was on the Brother Jonathan to make the trip back home from that historic event.
Also on this same cruise was his nemesis, Victor Smith. And so how they were nemesis, I don't exactly know. But Victor Smith had been involved in several scandals and had been in several different federal positions and had been removed from them. And there was, allegations of him stealing money and things like that. And just a few weeks before, he had been on another ship called the Golden Rule, and it had wrecked, and he and several other people had been stranded on a Caribbean island.
Smith reportedly had been carrying a large payroll on that trip and may have had some of it with him. I guess that's one of the remaining mysteries of the Brother Jonathan to us here in the year 2026. In total, it's believed there were 190 passengers and 54 crew members. On the day of the shipwreck, several reported that they saw the captain go down with the ship. There was also a reporter on board. His name was James Nesbitt.
He was a reporter for a newspaper in San Francisco, and he recognized right away what was happening, and he sat down and he wrote, they say it's a will, but from what I've read, it sounds like more like it was kind of a goodbye letter to his family, and he wrapped it up in some kind of waterproof oilskin container or something and put it in his pocket, and then when his body was found, that writing was still in his pocket, and they were able to pass that on to his family members.
The family that Cami is referring to is more of his chosen family. Nesbitt wrote to folks at a boarding home where he lived that had adopted him.
My dear Ma, 1,000 affectionate adieus. You spoke of my sailing on Friday, Hangman's Day, and the unlucky Jonathan. Well, here I am, with death before me. My love to you all, to Casper, to Dita, to Belle, Melly, and little Myra. Kiss her for me. Never forget, Grandpa.
This is quoted in the book Treasure Ship SS Brother Jonathan by Q. David Bowers. One woman on board was believed to carry gold bars.
It was well known, it's very well documented that she had a brothel in Sacramento.
Apparently, she sold off her operations for $5,500 in gold bars and was moving to Vancouver with her husband.
She was going to join him along with 7 other women. It's speculated that they were working for her, but it's hard to know. At least one of those women actually survived the shipwreck, only to go on and later drown herself just a few months after the shipwreck. So she, I'm going to speculate, was obviously very traumatized by the accident.
Coming up after a break, all the treasure sailing with the Brother Jonathan, including what happened to all that gold. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB. If you enjoy exploring little-known histories of the place you call home, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll keep new stories about life in the Pacific Northwest coming your way every Monday morning. And if you ever have any thoughts, memories, questions, or stories come up about anything we share here on the podcast, we would simply love to hear from you. You are always welcome to send a voice memo or email our way at theevergreen@opb.org. And now, back to sea. The Brother Jonathan was a commuter ship, but it was carrying more than people. It was also shipping money. For over a century, people spent fortunes trying to recover lost treasure, including 2 Wells Fargo boxes of gold that the ship had on board, and whatever money and valuables the passengers had brought with them, like those gold bars.
As soon as the ship wrecked, people knew that there was a lot of gold on it, and so they began looking for it. And so there are pictures of people in old-fashioned diving suits and things like that, and there'd be rumors that people had found it, and at one point there was even rumors of someone having gold bars that they said they had found in their tangled up fishing lines or something.
In the 1990s, a salvage group called Deep Sea Research finally located the ship.
They discovered that it was actually about 2 miles away from the crash site. It had been pushed through currents or something, and so it was actually not exactly where the crash site was. This is why no one had found it for so long.
Oh, man!
Are those copper?
They ain't copper, buddy.
That's gold.
This is footage from a video of the salvage group in 1996.
So they actually ended up using manned submarines, small submarines, to take, because it was so far down, someone couldn't very safely be diving this far down in these kinds of conditions. There's currents, and it's dark, and it's very cold, and there's predators.
Once they found the ship, they were able to locate gold coins.
Some of those are worth $60,000 a piece. Eureka! We have found it.
But they didn't get to keep it. Legal challenges, internal fighting, and growing costs halted the salvage work.
So there are laws in place to protect shipwrecks, and they vary depending on which state you're in. And so California was requiring a lot of protection for this site. It actually is now it's registered under the National Register of Historic Places. And so they had to have an archaeologist on board to make sure that they were actually doing the salvage work in a way that was preserving the material and preserving the site. And so everything was well documented. And of course, they got more than gold. They found there's a lot of plateware. There was bottles of wine. There was a lot of different things like that were also found. And all of this had to be really well preserved. So the state of California really went after the salvagers because they said that it was their shipwreck. So this becomes a huge lawsuit, a series of lawsuits that ultimately go to the Supreme Court.
That went on for several years, and in the end, it was no longer cost-effective to continue the salvage work, leaving the ship and its remaining treasure on the ocean floor.
My question, though, is that They were also shipping not just gold, but they were also shipping silver. Silver was something that was used quite a bit as well. And as far as I know, there weren't any silver coins found. So I think that that's kind of interesting. I think there probably are things still to find. Some people think there could be millions of dollars of things still to find. But forever, anyone who were to do it, it would be expensive and a lengthy process.
Many of the artifacts that the salvage team found are now in the Del Norte County Museum.
This is our gold coin. It's a $5 Liberty Head gold piece from the wreck of the Brother Jonathan.
Karen Betlieski is the director of the museum.
The thing that the caretaker there was most excited to show me was a shoe. And she was very excited about this because it was something that someone actually would wear.
This is the shoe. This is the shoe. It's made of rubber. It had to be a waterproof shoe. It definitely was a crew member's shoe.
So it was something that someone you know would have touched. It's something that someone would have actually used, whereas bottles of wine that weren't open weren't necessarily something that's personal, but this shoe was actually personal, and it meant a lot to her.
Yeah, so you can kind of imagine the person whose shoe it is versus like a box of bottles and the cargo container and a different part of the ship.
Right, exactly. They did say, though, that they did open one of the bottles of wine and drank it. So it was still good.
Who opened the museum?
The director, the person who was the director at the time, they opened one of the bottles of wine and tried it, and it was still good.
Wow, that's a story. Okay. Something else Cammie found at the museum? Music for a song that was written about the Brother Jonathan.
Here's the song right here. It's called The Sunken Rock. A rock, our ship has struck a rock. Sunk in the sea, the white spray from the dashing wave rolls onward, bold and free.
So this was a big news story, national news story at the time, and someone wrote a song and distributed the music for it, and it's not something that we would know today, but they have the music at the Historical Society.
An inquiry found the wreck of the Brother Jonathan to be accidental, but also advised for changes to maritime safety regulations. The disaster also spurred the construction of the St. George Reef Lighthouse, about 8 miles off the Northern California coast. And over the years, debris from the wreck washed ashore, including the ship's wheel, which now lives in Portland's Dan and Louie's Oyster Bar.
And for the longest time, it was right there by the door, and you could pose next to it and touch it and everything. But they decided that it was starting to get a little too fragile. So now it's up on the wall, and you can just see it up there.
So many people on the ship were never identified. 2 of them in particular are still on Cammie's mind.
One of the things I really wanted to solve with this that I couldn't. So one of the survivors was just listed as Chinese woman and child. And the other survivors said that it was her and her husband, and they both wanted to get on this lifeboat, and the crew members would not let the man get on. So they made him go back, and just the Chinese woman and her child, and they were crying and wanted the husband to come on, but they wouldn't let him. So this woman and child survived, but they don't have a name. News reports at the time said that her husband had been a tea merchant in Portland. So I looked through and tried to find anything. There were 2 tea merchants in Portland, Chinese tea merchants within this time period. But I don't think it was either one of them because those businesses continued on. I wasn't able to find out any other information about her at all. We have no idea who this person was.
Today, the Brother Jonathan shipwreck is protected under the National Register of Historic Places. Cammie calls it a ship of history.
There were so many things going on the West Coast within this time period, and it carried people from all walks of life, from all over the world. You had immigrants, and you had Native Americans, and you had people that were trying to come here to start a new life, and it's just they were all together, and then they all find themselves in these horrific conditions. And you know, it's this tragedy, but at the same time, there isn't a villain. So it's something that we can kind of look at and find interesting, and maybe even find a little bit of romance associated with it, of, treasure and what was happening. And to me, that's really interesting to do a story that just shows you so many different things and so many different people within this time period.
And it remains just one of thousands of ships now resting under the waters of the Northwest Pacific coast. You can learn even more about the Brother Jonathan in Cami Horton's Oregon Experience documentary about it at opb.org, or find a link in our show notes. Thank you for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Mia Estrada produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. He also mixed and mastered the episode. The OPB podcast team also includes Julie Sabatier and Sage Van Wing. Cami Horton did the interviews you heard, which were filmed and recorded by Dan Evans and Evan Rodriguez. The music in this episode is from Audio Network. And hey, if you have a question for us, please do not hesitate to reach out. Email us at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.